All right, so we're back. Welcome everyone for the continued episodes of the Phil Snow Show. Want to welcome everyone back. I apologize for the delay. It's been busy, and I just haven't had time to get in here. So we're going to continue on where we left off, which I believe was around. This segment is called "Getting to Know Phil Snow," so you know who you're talking to, what we're, what kind of guy you listen to, and where I'm coming from. This is going to be a little mixed up because it's not always just me telling you about who I am. I think it's going to be interspersed with. It'll always be interspersed with me telling different stories, interjecting little things. So be patient with that because really that's the nature of what this is going to be about. This show, it's going to be kind of my ramblings and my insights and my offerings for what they're worth. And I want to be clear about a couple things. Who I am is, it just it just one messed up dude. All right, I'm no one to take as an example. You'll probably hear me say a lot of things which will include some type of um, parameters, some parameters and guidance and boundaries which I believe that human beings we should adhere to and live by. But I want you to know for a fact that I am not that example. It's easy enough for me to talk about things that I think are important, but I don't want you to think, that you're looking at a guy that is not a hypocrite himself, that hasn't violated practically every one of the things that I believe I and we should adhere to. So, like I say, you're talking to or listening to just one messed up individual who's made probably about every mistake that a person can make and come out at the other side relatively unscathed. I wish I could say the same for the people around me. I'm sure I've hurt people and done some damage, as we all do. And so to those people, I'll always apologize and ask for your forgiveness. But I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way because I don't want anyone to think that I think, as I try and paint a narrative or a picture about the directions I hope that we can move in, which I believe are correct. I don't want you to hold me to a standard and say, oh, this guy, wants to do good, but falls short. Listen, we all fall short. That's not the point. The point is that we try to do better. And that we kind of get off condemning one another, because like I'm telling you now, I've made 1,000 mistakes or more. If I could go back and do things over again, sure, of course, I would like to avoid those things. However, that's how I learned, by making mistakes is how I learned the lessons that I've learned. And I'm sure all of us, we all say the same. So the point is, let's not continually criticize one another, but let's instead find ways to compliment one another and encourage. You know what? I'm going to change this light. That's bothering me. This reflection you're seeing in my glasses. One moment. That's better. Sorry about that. Like I said, studio's just getting together. Complete. I don't have production crew. I don't have nothing. So we'll get to that hopefully. If you continue to watch these, if you continue to share them, if you include subscribe and push the like button, whatever format we're on, that you can help push this thing forward. So, all that being said, where are we going today? I'm trying to get a little bit more scripted in these so that we can focus, but at the beginning, this is what you're looking at. So, I believe when we left off last, I was telling you about myself, I was telling you about my experiences. I was about 18 years old, and I'd come home and met a young man who had a great influence on my life. And I think for right now, we're going to concentrate. What I'm trying to avoid doing is either imposing into the conversation or upon anybody too many narrow perspectives. I don't want the conversation to be so focused that it becomes like this one-sided or one myopic subject. And what I fear is some of the things I'm going to bring up, they're going to kind of lean in that direction. Not because I wanted to, but because people's tendencies to be focused on things they either dislike, that they have ill understanding of, or that they may have some type of prejudices. They've been ill-informed, and they have all kinds of pent-up aggravation and aggression that they want to get off, opinions that they want to voice. And although I'm open to all of that, I'm open to criticism, I'm open to questions, comments, all of that. I don't want it to become like that takes us off the rails and that becomes our only focus. So I'm trying to take you through my life and tell you things about myself and yet not get hung up on certain things. So where were we at? I had met this young man, Abdullah, and what happened with him? I'm just going to come out and tell you the story. And hopefully this won't become the focal point of this whole thing. But and I'll tell you why it's important that it not become a single issue narrative, is because the things that I'm addressing, that I want to address with you and with everyone, is much broader than just my perspectives. It's much broader than just what I believe in and what I think about things. That being said, there's no way you can have any engagement with me, discuss any ideas, have any input from me whatsoever, that it won't be impacted by what I believe. And so though I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to shove my beliefs towards anyone or down anyone's throats or anything like that. On the one hand, everything that comes from me is going to be altered or affected or influenced to one degree or another by my beliefs. So, and what I happen to believe is, the boogeyman of the 21st century, for the last 2-3 decades, or for the last 2 decades now almost. So getting back to Abdullah, you can probably guess where this is going. seeing as how his name was Abdullah. We became quick friends. The guy showed up at my house regularly. We started hanging out. I found him to be a fascinating young man. He was younger than me. He was only, at the time, 16 years old. And as I had mentioned, he had essentially escaped from his country in Libya, which was under the dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi. And he made it here. We met, started hanging out. He didn't speak all that great of English, but he spoke enough. And he was incredibly expressive. One of the things that was kind of funny about him was he was an excellent soccer player. I have never seen anybody, we don't play that much soccer here in America, especially back then. It's become a little bit more popular. But I had never seen anybody play soccer like this guy. This guy could do just incredible stuff with the soccer ball. And so as a result, he was part of the high school soccer team. And, we're in California at the time. So he's, in addition to, in California, there's a lot of Latino, Mexican population there who love soccer and play soccer. So the team had a lot of Mexican youth on it. And what they loved to teach Abdullah, since he didn't know a lot of English, was they loved to teach him curse words. They thought it was hilarious to teach him foul language. And so he had a tendency to use a lot of foul language because he didn't know how to express himself. So it was kind of amusing, but it was a little funny thing. He'd always, I'm not going to repeat it, but it was just funny. Anyways, so we started hanging out, and he introduced me to his brothers and whatnot. I'll visit them a few times, and and I introduced them to my way of life, which was partying, and that's what I'm 19 years old. I'm interested in partying, really. Back then, that's what I did. Girls and partying. In any case, we start hanging out, and I had earned a free trip, a river rafting trip with Outward Bound, as a result of me having a lot of people went on Outward Bound after I returned, based upon my experience and my sharing it with people. Other people wanted to go, and they did. And so that year, Outward Bound offered anybody who had referred people to the program was eligible to receive a free course. And so I got one on river rafting. We were going to raft down the Green River, which runs through, it was going kind of out of Wyoming into Colorado, in that area. And so Abdullah had a program that he was attending. It used to be I think it was every couple of years or so they did it. It could have been once a year. The Libyans that were living in America, that were dispersed throughout America, would all come together at these camps, and they would discuss, they would get together with one another and enjoy one another's company, but also there was a lot of talk about how to deal with the problem, which was Gaddafi back home. Gaddafi was accused of actually bringing his oppression to America. And they said there, I don't know if it's ever been proven or not, but what many Libyans claim, and I believe there's some validity to it, was that he was sending kind of like hit squads over here. And people that were speaking up against him, he was taking them out. So in any case, they would get together. And so Abdullah wanted to go to Colorado. It worked out perfect for me because I wanted to go on this river rafting course. So we shared experiences. We drove my car. And that was the purpose for the trip. So, but that's not really the important part. Here's the important part. So we're driving through the desert. It's the middle of the night. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And as was my habit at that time, especially when driving, especially at night in the desert where there's not a more perfect environment, you know, we're driving, we're smoking a little. I didn't like to smoke a lot of weed back then. And so we're rolling, and it's on this highway, no traffic, gorgeous desert night, high plateau. I think somewhere in the state of Utah at that point. And I asked Abdullah, what do the people of your country believe? You know, what religion? What's your perspective on things? And he offered to me that he said all the people in my country are Muslim. And I didn't know much. When you said the word Muslim to me, first thing I think of is like, okay, Malcolm X, Black Muslims. What's this all about? I said, so what do Muslims believe? He starts telling me. As he's telling me, I'm thinking, oh my goodness. This sounds a lot like what I believe. By then I had gone through kind of a bit of soul searching. And what had happened was, I was raised as a Christian. I went to a Catholic school and raised with a religious upbringing, church every Sunday, plus on Fridays. At the Catholic school and the church on Fridays as well. And, and I'm forever grateful to my Christian upbringing, because one thing it gave me was a solid belief in God. It didn't answer all my questions, and there were some things that never made sense to me. However, I believed in God. But there was things about Christianity that just never resonated with me. It just didn't make sense. And so I had gone through this period where I was trying to sort things out. And, even as a kid in Catholic school, I remember asking questions. And there's a whole story involved there, and I'll tell it another time. I'm not going to go into it now. It happened in 7th grade with Sister Mary Francis, who was our teacher then. But in any case, there were things that just didn't add up. So I kind of like drifted away from some of the tenets, the primary tenets of Christianity that I couldn't sort out and I couldn't get viable answers to. And they all revolved around the nature of Jesus Christ and the Trinity. And so anyways, I had begun while I was on Outward Bound. Not only did we do a 3-day solo where we were by ourselves in the mountains for 3 days without eating, but we also each day we would do these like little self-retreats where we'd go up, spend a half an hour, 45 minutes, just kind of in this gorgeous environment, in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. And you're just surrounded by the beauty of God's creation and reflecting on things. And some people would write in their journals. Some people would just do whatever, maybe meditate or whatever seemed to work for them, and think about things, and if you stop and think about it now, it's rare that we get that type of solace and time to just kind of clear our heads, especially nowadays when we got social media and all this stuff going on. But so being out there already in an isolated situation and then isolating yourself further gave plenty of time for thought and reflection. And I had come to the conclusion that I was going to explore my heritage. Now, on my father's side, it's a mixture of Mexican Indian. To the best, that's my knowledge of it. From what I understand, Apache Indian and Spanish Mexican, I'm not exactly sure. My great grandfather is from Jalisco, Mexico, and or from Guadalajara, and my great grandmother from Jalisco. And in any case, I didn't know anything about Native American beliefs. However, I knew that they believed in one God, and they had this kind of gentle approach to the earth, a lot of respect for the earth, and a lot of simple yet pure ways of approaching, their environment. And a lot of what I could tell was that their beliefs were very closely related to the environment in which they lived. And I knew that they believed just in one God. That was my understanding. Whether it was right or wrong, that's what I believed they believed. So I made a decision that I'm going to begin exploring, this is my heritage. So I'm going to begin exploring what Native Americans believe in, and maybe that's where I belong, So that was the mindset I had when I met Abdullah. Now, I didn't really, at that point, hadn't found any traction, a place to where I could look at much, into much about Native American beliefs. But that was an intention. So here I am driving across the desert with this young man. Tells me, he's Muslim and everyone in this country is Muslim. So what do you guys believe? He starts telling me about, we believe in one God. Okay, makes sense. And he starts telling me about these prophets and messengers. Starts talking about Abraham, Noah, Moses, Solomon. I know all these guys, right? These are the ones that I grew up with, right? Starts talking about Jesus Christ. I said, well, tell me what you believe about Jesus. He said, well, we believe Jesus is a prophet and a messenger from God. I said, yeah, you guys believe that he's the Son of God? Or that he's God incarnate? No, we don't believe that. We believe he's a servant of God. And right away, that hit me like a ton of bricks, because those were the conclusions that I was coming to on my own. Using using the scriptures, using my intellect, using just common sense. It just never, the idea that Jesus was God and the whole sacrifice for your sins and everything, I never could get around that. And I never got clear answers on it when I asked. So I continued to ask him questions. We can go into details about this forever. I'm not going to do it right now. Bottom line is, he sparked an interest for me in the religion of Islam, and so much so that night I laughed out of just pure, kind of like it was, you ever have one of those laughs where you laugh out of, it's kind of a nervous relief a joyful relief, or like finding out about something. It's like, oh my goodness. And you just, as an expression of it, you laugh because you're so happy. And I was happy, like, wow, man, this is amazing. I didn't know anything about this. And here it is right in front of me. And I don't know much what he's talking about, but already I can feel I'm a little inclined towards this. And so that was the beginning of what turned out to be a long road. 12 years. 12 years. And through that part of my life, there's a lot to tell you about. But I'm not, we're not going to go into details. I'm skipping over a lot of stuff. I'm skipping over incredible personalities that are good friends of mine, that I'm not necessarily comfortable with talking about them without at least getting some permission from them, because this is going to be in a public format. But, needless to say, it's the people in my life that have shaped my life and been the biggest influence more than anything. I think that's the same for all of us. But bottom line was, my relationship with Abdullah set me on a path that over these 12 years, I ended up, becoming Muslim. And so that's where I'm at today. I embraced Islam in 1993. I've been a practicing Muslim now for, 27 years. So today, for those of you who don't know, is the first day of Ramadan 2020. On the 25th of this month will be my 27th year anniversary, because I embraced Islam during the month of Ramadan. And so that has informed, affected, and shaped my life in just innumerable. I can't even count the ways that it's impacted me. And of course, it hasn't been always an easy road, especially now with the environment that we're in. And I know that a lot of you that are watching this, you probably come to this, some of you might be intrigued right now. Some of you might be disgusted. Some of you might be angry, frustrated, whatever. Many of you come with a lot of opinions about Islam, a lot of inaccurate opinions. I'm going to say that right up front. And I've spent now decades of people telling me about what I believe, people telling me about Islam, people telling me about what the Quran says. And they tell me with a certain amount of vehement anger. And I understand, simply because they've been misinformed, underinformed, given inaccurate information, or information that's out of context. And oftentimes, the events of the world have influenced all of us. The media has given a certain narrative. And in the West, there's always been, for centuries, there's been a tension between the East and the West, Islam and Christianity. And so I understand that this is, this tension that's existed all these times. There's been this parallel kind of aggravation. And so, but the point is that most of all of that is based upon inaccurate information. Almost all of it. And not only unintentional misinformation, sometimes flat out lies. And I'm sure over the course of this, we're going to address things, but I wanted to bring this as kind of the elephant in the room type thing. I want you to know where I'm coming from, but I also want you to understand that That's not what this show is about. Again, I can't separate my life, my thoughts, it's all influenced to one degree or another by what I believe. That being said, um, I don't want this to just be about Islam, or, although I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of kind of kickback, and I'm going to have to deal with that. And I don't mind dealing with it because I think it's an opportunity for us to understand one another better, and certainly for people that are misinformed to get accurate information. I don't want to turn things into an argument, and I won't do that. I will gratefully answer questions. I will take criticisms. I will address things to the best of my ability. I'm no scholar. However, I have access to scholars worldwide, here in America and, beyond. I have access, thank God, to people who are some of the most renowned scholars on earth. And that's just because I've been a very fortunate person. I've lived a very rich life. Anyone who knows me can attest to that fact, that I have had a fascinating, bountiful life. I've had a lot of different experiences, and most of it has been through the engagement of other human beings. And I've found myself in the most odd of situations. Like where there's been times where I looked around and said, how in the world did I end up in this place, in this gathering with these people? And this, there's stuff that's happened to me that is just very unique. And I can't attribute that to anything except by the grace and mercy of God. And so, but because of that, I'm fortunate. I've got access to all kinds of people. And so I say that only to say that, to repeat that I'm not a scholar. I've learned a little bit along the way because of the company I've been able to keep and the people that I've been able to be with. But so I've picked up some knowledge by kind of by osmosis. But I'm not someone. If a question is beyond my capacity, I'll do my best to get you the answer. I might not be able to give it to you immediately. I'll do what I can immediately, but I'll find someone who can give you an answer. But again, I'm not going to argue. And I don't want this to only be about Islam. I just think that's an unproductive thing. If people are interested, they want to know, happy to talk about it. If you want to have criticisms, questions, happy to deal with that. But let's not let that be the topic. We've got bigger fish to fry here. Whether you are a Christian, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're Jewish, whether you're a Taoist, whether you're an atheist, I won't say it doesn't matter to me because, of course, I want everybody to find the truth. And I want to make a distinction here. Not their truth, but the truth. And I think there is a distinction to be made there. Now, obviously, by saying that, I'm implying that there is a truth. And we're not all on it. I don't say that to insult anybody. Obviously, I think I'm on the truth. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and you think you're on the truth, and that's fine. But both of us can't be on the truth. We can be on a journey to the truth, but we can't, either we're both wrong, one of us is right, or both of us is wrong. Or there's elements or misunderstandings, or both of us maybe we're off the mark a little bit. There's room for that, but the idea is let's not make that the criteria by which how we engage with one another and how we limit our capacity. When I say we have bigger fish to fry, what I mean is, humanity is faced with some difficult, trying times right now. Obviously, it's not like we haven't been faced with trying times in the past. This is human nature. This is the history of humanity. But we're in some unique times. Never before in the history of mankind have we had the capacity that we do now. And, along comes, in the midst of all of this little virus, an unseen virus that is humbling us in ways that we never perhaps imagined. Now, there's a lot to talk about here because the number of opinions about what we're going through now is incredible. And it's almost overwhelming, so much we can't even digest it all. Everything from the conspiracy theories to, to the complete dismissal of any scientific evidence, to the complete acceptance of every quote unquote scientific evidence, to, you've got a whole plethora of things to deal with. From the whole Illuminati angle, and we're trying to it's the 1984 move, or the authoritarian movement to take over the world, one world government, have a 1984 type of authoritarian invasive government that requires an event like this to bring about the environment that's necessary for that. You've got, then you've got, that's a possibility. I'm not saying these aren't possibilities. They are. Whether they're remote possibilities or, some people would argue that, listen, all this stuff is out there. They have been talking about doing this for decades, and now it's coming to fruition. You know what? There's evidence that they will rely upon, the people that believe in this will rely upon it, and it's not, you can't dismiss it all. Then on the other side of the coin, listen, man, pandemics, disease, plagues have affected humanity since the beginning of humanity, as far as we know. And how do we know it's not just like, some people think it is? It's an epidemic. It has implications. And people are getting sick and dying. And then, there's a whole argument, well, more people die from influenza, and so on and so forth. There's explanations for some of it. I don't know all the explanations, but I think there are people that do. And there's explanations for the other side too. The reason I'm bringing up all these different things is I think we're in a time of just mass confusion. It's not that we don't have enough information, it's that we have too much information coming at us from every direction. And it's almost impossible to digest it all. Then there's the reality. For whatever reason, whether it be a sincere, dedicated, truthful reason, or whether it be some oddball conspiracy, we're in this condition of being limited. Our freedoms are being limited. Things are changing, rapidly changing. And as a result, we're faced with some new realities, and so the more important thing to me is How do we respond to this? How do we, in addition to getting all this information, people are in a state of heightened anxiety. They're in a state of fear. Some of it driven, and orchestrated. Some of it is natural. It's a reasonable amount of fear. They have economic fears. They have fears for their loved ones, um, who may or may, be affected by this, their health perspectives. They have, or the people that they know who are working on kind of the front lines in the emergency rooms and whatnot. People have lost their jobs. They've lost their, we don't know what's going on. And this creates a real instability. What happens when we're unstable? What happens when we're anxious about something? We're easily aggravated. So when you take that type of kind of attitude, and then you throw into it all these different ideas, to where people are overstimulated, really, you're going to get kind of a curious response from humanity, and that's what we're witnessing now. So it's a really unique time, a very, very unique time, but I see it as a time of opportunity. And I have some different perspectives that I'm going to share with you about all of this stuff, It's a shame, of course, that people are dying, that they're getting sick and suffering and dying. However, there's also good in it. People die every day. We don't need the coronavirus to die. We can die, as many people state, from flu. We can die from getting hit by a car. We can die from a heart attack, from lung disease. We can die from tripping over our own feet and diving headfirst into a brick wall. We can die from getting shot. We can die from, a zillion and one ways we can die. And we do die every day. And that's the one thing that's guaranteed. Doesn't matter what you believe. We're going to die. Some things we can agree upon. We, me, you, and everyone, we're going to die. There's no argument about that. We can discuss what, our perspectives about what happens when we die. That's another discussion. But one thing we can all agree upon is we're going to die. And we have this intuitive understanding about how we should live. All of us have a kind of instinctual, if you will, understanding of justice, and what's fair and what's compassionate and what's right. And there's exceptions, of course, to every rule. There's people out there that are just, for whatever reason, they're just mean. They want to see people hurt, or they want to see, some type of revenge or whatever. But that's not, the average human being is not like that. The average human being, if they see something cruel being done, they're repelled by it. The average human being, if they see someone suffering, they want to help alleviate that suffering. And that's what this is about. This is what, really, in the end of the day, this is what the Phil Snow Show is about. It's about getting people together, like-minded individuals, and trying to do good. I did the whole spiel about Islam because I'm trying to let you know where I'm coming from, but I understand there's a lot of different perspectives and people are coming from their own perspective, and that's fine. The idea is whatever your perspective, what motivates you is less important to me than what you're doing with that. So if you and I and everyone else, we can agree on doing some good for one another and showing compassion to one another and helping the people who are in need of help, then, what you believe, quite frankly, doesn't concern me. Or what you don't believe doesn't concern me. If you're someone who has a heart that wants to look at the good rather than the bad, more positive than negative, then I think we have something that we can do together. And I think we are the vast majority of humanity. So why is it that we're not, doing more? It's a good question. But we can change it. We can change what we do from one day to the next, from one moment to the next. And so really what I'm reaching out to, I'm casting a net, I'm throwing out a line, and I'm trying to reel in, not reel in, but attract people who want to do good. And as I mentioned, I'm fortunate. I know people in almost every field of every professional field, from shoe shiners to brain surgeons, from rocket scientists to, taxi drivers to cooks to farmers. And not just that I know people that do this, I know people that are they're in the top of their field. And those that I don't know, I'm this close to, I can reach out and get in touch with them. So when we have all this expertise, we have all this resource, and I say this all the time, the most squandered resource that we have is our human resources. Here we are faced with all these challenges, whether they be environmental, whether it be social justice, whether it be, inequities of all different kinds, racism, prejudices, ignorance. We've got a whole just mass of things to be concerned about. And all these problems need solutions. But we have the capacity. We have this rich, deeply informed body of humanity, of resources, human resources that we can access, that we can reach out to, that we can cooperate with, and we can address these things. All it takes is changing a little bit of our attitude and thinking perhaps a little bit differently. And we all have that capacity as well. Everything I'm saying, everything you can hear me say, it's not rocket science. It's not anything brilliant. It's really rudimentary, fundamental, just fundamental basic things. It's common sense, really. And who was it? Will Rogers said, common sense isn't so common. And we've all found that to be true. We look out and, and we're all kind of in awe of how far things have gone off the rails. I don't think there's anybody, in spite of how adamantly we might hang on to our position, in our quiet moments, and when we're honest with ourselves and with those around us, we say, man, this is unprecedented of how awkward where we're at right now. So the idea is to gather together these human resources. This is the line I'm throwing out. This is the energy I'm trying to bring in. I want you to reach out to me. It's going to begin with a dialogue here. This is where it's beginning. It's beginning in my little office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a discussion with me, myself, and I right now. I'm sitting here by myself having this long discussion with you in hopes that I won't be alone for long. Now, there's people that support me already. That's why I'm even doing this. I'm doing this because other people have told me to. I don't recall if I've told you this or not already, but over the past I won't say several years, but the past few years, different people have told me that I needed to be doing something along these lines. Actually, they didn't say a podcast. They just said, you need to do something. You need to write a book or, and I dismissed their, I dismissed what they were telling me. Until different people from different areas that didn't know one another started, saying the same thing. Different people coming with the same conclusion and telling me. And I thought, well, hold on a minute. Maybe it's me. I'm missing something. I didn't understand what they were talking about initially. But when each one of them came to me, I started to, I thought, well, maybe there's something here that I'm missing. So those are my supporters. Initially, that's all I have is people that came to me. But some of them I've known for years, but there's been people that when I talked about the possibility of this, people that I really barely even knew, they shared an incredible amount of enthusiasm and encouragement. They said, your friends are right. You should do this. And so I say that only to say that, so even though I am sitting here alone in my office, there are people who support me, but not enough. Because what we're trying to do is create kind of a movement. And that means I need your input. I need your support. We need each other. I don't need it. We need it. We need one another. We need to accommodate each other. We need to make room for our differences and focus on our commonalities. We need to, I one time attended a thing where I was talking to a young man who was an editor of a magazine. I can't remember the name of it. Could have been the Republic. I don't recall. Anyways, we were having a discussion and I was describing to him some thoughts about diverse communities. And I was using the example of two circles. Imagine each circle represents a community. And we have different perspectives. We have different interests. We have different objectives and goals. However, we also have overlapping goals. So if you can imagine two circles that overlap one another, where they intersect, the areas outside of that are your own independent, autonomous, you could say, interest, goals, and objectives. But where they overlap one another, that's your commonality. Those are common interests and objectives that are shared by one or more organizations and or people. And when I did that, he said, the strongest materials thus known to mankind are what they call bonded, like tungsten, I think is one of them. They're composite materials where they bind chemically. They bind different things. So when I did the overlapping circle thing, it occurred to him, because of his understanding of the chemistry and whatnot, the bonding of chemicals and different elements is what creates the strongest, most resilient materials that are known to mankind. And that hit me kind of like an epiphany. So you have these different materials, but when they come together and they bond, it creates the most incredible, strong, and resilient materials. So there we have it. We have different ideas. We have different approaches. We have, if we approach each other like this, with our hands out, pushing one another away, your ideas are foreign to me, I don't want to accept, or, even hear from you, or we bring all these kind of fears and prejudices on, then we're separate and we're weak. But if we say, well, listen, let me hear what you have to say, and please, allow me to share with you my ideas. We come together, we overlap, we find our common interests. Now we're creating bonds that will create a society, a material that will be more resilient, that will be able to withstand difficulties. This is what we need. True or not? Someone tell me. True or not? Do we have to be enemies? Do we always have to see, the worst in one another? Can't we have a little, as the Beatles said? I grew up, I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s. The Beatles said, all we need is love. So, I'm always going to be impacted to one degree or another by that. And so, let's, we've had this interesting interruption in history where the whole world is suddenly ground to a stop. For the most part, people are holed up in their homes. They're not going to work. They're not going to their places of worship. The only place they're going is to the false gods of worship, consumerism. So they're going to the store, but really even that's limited. They're only going to the stores for their sustenance. They're not going shopping for Louis Vuitton bags and all that type of nonsense. But so we've had this interruption, and it's an opportunity for us to kind of change our trajectory. And I'm sure all of you are reevaluating your lives, your relationships, perhaps even your faith, or how you look at things. You're kind of analyzing it, maybe realizing like some of the things that you held that were important aren't quite as important as you thought they were, and some of the things that you've neglected, you realize like, wow, I've neglected things that are really important to me. So we've had this kind of like opening, was an opportunity to readjust our sails, to kind of, move in a different direction, or if not in a completely different direction, perhaps in the same direction, but in a different method. And that in itself can make all the difference. And as we move forward from this, perhaps we'll also discover new horizons and new capacities, and a lot more positive, hopeful avenues. I think all of us can agree that when we looked out upon the world and the politics and the governments and the inequities, the poverty, for goodness sakes, just look at the pollution in our oceans, on our land, in our streets, the unhealthy condition of our physical bodies, of our minds. We can see that there's a concerning degradation going on. And here's an opportunity to, we've all been forced to halt ourselves. And here's an opportunity to kind of reevaluate things, to reach out to our neighbors, to make sure one another is all right, to assist one another. And perhaps if we do this correctly, we can really, kind of change things for the better. Who's with me? Who's with me? Is there anything that I'm saying that's offensive? Is there anything that I'm inviting to you that's, worthy of dismissing? What is it? I'm asking you to get along with others. This is like kindergarten stuff, right? You go in the kindergarten, you got to get along with everybody, treat everybody fairly, take your turn, you know, give the next person their turn, be polite, say thank you, say please. Come on, man. Am I asking for that much? Really? Man, look at me. This whole thing of, my hair is longer now than it's ever been in my life, but still, I could use a haircut. And my beard, my goodness. So, bear with me. I know it's a trial to have to look at me and listen to me all this time, but stop and think about it. Is what I'm inviting you to, does it sound worthwhile? Does it sound something you could be a part of? I've got a lot of ideas. This is just introduction stuff. I've already got stuff ready to roll. But before we can do anything, we have to form a cohesive kind of, I'm using the word movement. I don't know if that's a correct word, but, a cohesive bond. And we have to kind of tune ourselves a little bit. If you have a guitar or violin or any instrument, piano, before you can make beautiful music, which is what these instruments were created to do, they have to be in tune. If they're out of tune, dissonance, it's aggravating. It doesn't sound right. I'm no musician.